Operations team since 1997. Back in 1997, we were hovering around about 4 million miles in our global database of samples. So for those of you who haven't seen a CPR, on the screen now is just a schematic view. It's a wonderful piece of equipment, weighs about 85 kilograms, collects plankton across the oceans of the world, and it's particularly reliable, and we've got a fantastic database. If you haven't seen it, when we're back to normal and you want to come down to our workshop, please contact me and we're more than happy to arrange a visit. Some key facts of our survey on the screen now. You see we started way back in 1931. This year we're averaging about 7,500 miles a month. Bearing in mind we had an awful start to the year with Storm Dennis and the other atrocious weather, and now of course the challenges of the current pandemic. Third line down, you see we're very close now to hitting a significant milestone, and a little bit more about that later. And the next line really is the crux of what we're talking about. If you come and visit us at Citadel Hill, we're quite a small team. But if you look beyond our walls, we have a masses of volunteers across all the shipping organisations who are supporting this survey. Next two lines, just a couple of stats. But then, as we go down the bottom of the slide, it's important to note that we support sister surveys across the globe. And at the moment, it's counting as 9. In my inbox at the moment, we've got at least another 2 inquiries, one from Italy and one from Costa Rica, who want to join the sort of international team of CPR surveys. So it is a growing feat. And the CPR as well, a lot of people who know the CPR will associate it with the time series. And the time series is a fantastic standalone scientific achievement. But the CPR itself is also used increasingly for more bespoke projects, whether it's proof of concept through the Northwest Passage, and we're doing quite a lot now in like the higher latitudes, and we even used it recently in African lakes. So there we are. That's our workshop at Citadel Hill. We achieve all this with 53 bodies, 53 CPR bodies, and they are well utilised. So the photograph, the lower photograph, shows our racks empty. Each one of those pallets represents a CPR. It's either because it's empty, the CPR is either on its journey to the ship, on the ship, in the water, or on its logistical journey back to us. And the spinning globe is historical route maps of our tows and our sister surveys tows. You see we've got quite a lot of global coverage. In fact, we say from our small footprint in Citadel Hill, Plymouth, we sort of have a global impact. None of this would be possible without the support of the shipping industry. We like to call them our Navy of volunteers. And that's the entire shipping industry. You hear a lot of talk about the captains and the ships, and rightly so, because they're the guys who are actually towing for us. But we have to engage with everyone across the industry, from the owners, the onboard people, the ship's agents, and it says there, the port engineers and the shoreside gang. And the shoreside gang, as you'll see later, are often the unsung heroes of what we achieve. All those arrows just show that the shipping industry is interlinked. And when we go to the ports, all these people know each other, and they've known each other for years and sometimes decades. And we're buying into this family that already exists at some of these major ports. So this is what we're trying to achieve. The picture on the left is a CPR tow just about to happen from one of our regular suits, Ship of Opportunity. That particular one is the arm rig, towing from Roscoff into Plymouth. And you'll see all the guys there in their orange boiler suits just about to deploy the CPR. The guy on the extreme left is the bosun. As soon as that CPR hits the water, he'll be on his radio to the bridge, logging the position that CPR starts sampling. And then the picture on the right is one from one of our bespoke projects. This one is towing up the eastern seaboard of Canada. And if Derek's listening, that's probably your homeland in the background. And again, CPR just about to start its journey. So before we can launch the CPR, we first have to find a ship. We'll find a ship for one of two reasons. One, because one of our regular time series ships has gone offline, whether it's been sold off charter or gone to a commercial for other commercial reasons, or it's a specific science-driven request. In either of those scenarios, we have to do our research, look through our address book, which is like a real golden nugget of the survey, and our first point of contact needs to be someone in that shipping company who has the power to make the decisions. So we try to make our pitch at the most senior level possible. We're lucky that we've got a well-tried patter, if you like, and we've got lots of history behind us that helps back this up, and we are quite successful. But once we got permission from the owners, we then have to arrange go and see the ship, because we have to bear in mind that none of the ships that we use are designed or rigged for towing. So it's not only, oh, will you tow for us? Can we come and have a look at your ship because we want to modify it, please? So we'll arrange this visit, and we'll go and speak to the captain. Until we've actually had that visit, none of this is a done deal, because the captain is the lord and master of his ship, and if he thinks we're unsafe or it's not what he wants to get involved with, he can stop it then, even if we got the permission from the senior people back in his company headquarters. So when we have this visit on the ship, he'll get his shipboard team, typically his chief officer, his bosun, and some nominated crew members, and we'll come up with a plan on how we're going to rig a tow point, which winches we're going to use. And at that point, we'll bring our port engineer in, and we'll come up with a design that everyone is happy with. Before we leave that port, before we have the port after the ship's visit, and bearing in mind that it would have all gone successful, we then have to set up the logistics. And there's more about that later on in the talk, but there's a big logistical operation behind the CPR survey. So here we are. This is on a day of a fitting out. This is David Wilson, our ship's liaison officer, in the top left-hand corner. And we were rigging on this day a vessel called the Hafnia Seaways, which tows from Immingham across to Germany for us. We had permission from the ship. We had an initial meeting with the captain, and this is the day of fitting it out. So the yellow box are our iconic yellow boxes we sent to our friendly port engineer in advance, and inside there is a CPR plus all the blocks, tackles, jackals, guy ropes, waiting for us at Immingham. We then asked the engineers to take it down to the ship that was berthed in the correct location, and then we hit a stumble. We hit a stumble because the davit was on the quayside. We wanted it on probably was about deck 5, and there was cargo in the way. So if we've come all the way to Immingham, how are we going to get this davit up onto deck 5 so we can do the welding? Well, luckily, we've worked out of that port for years and years, and we've known some of the stevedores and some of the dockside workers. A request went in, oh, there's a crane just a few hundred metres up the quay, any chance of a borrow? And for the price of a couple boxes of chocolates, the crane came along, lifted the davit on, and then our engineers were able to carry out and do the welding of the davit on board. So that doesn't sound a lot, but we've had circumstances where we've had to hire a crane, and it's cost us in excess of £3,000. So we've got that amount of goodwill in the ports that we can just have a temporary borrow of a crane. The bottom left-hand pictures, you'll see the davit itself, and then the next one along is the ship's mooring winches. So what our aim is, wherever possible, to use the ship's mooring winches in conjunction with one of our own davits to safely put the CPR over the side. And then before we leave, you'll see the safe working load mark on the davit. And what we do there, that's part of our procedures to make sure we're safe and compliant with everything we do. And we'll have a test engineer, and they will issue us with a test certificate before we even ask them to put the first CPR in the water. As an aside, the bottom picture is from the port of Mosjøen in Norway. You'll see that vessel there has an enclosed mooring deck. So that big tall davit, which is about 2.5 meters high, wouldn't fit under. So what we're doing there, we're got the local engineers involved, and we're welding a bespoke tow point aft of the ship so we can hang our tow blocks on. And again, we're using the mooring winches with a couple of diverter tow blocks so the wire goes safely over the side, doesn't impede any crew's access on the working deck, and everything's safe and compliant. So let's just call that the good place, because I like the good place because it's the amount of goodwill. The crane hire was free. The ship's crew, the chief officer, their cooperation on that day was fantastic, and they were under a lot of pressure. But it doesn't have to be like that. So this is another ship's fit out, what we did for a bespoke project, and everything had to be negotiated with hard cash. So the left-hand picture is actually US $100 bills going over, negotiating for the charter of the vessel. The middle picture is the tow point being welded. We tried to get that done on a Friday. Couldn't find a welder. Tried to do it on a Saturday. He turned up. I just need another piece of kit. I'll do it tomorrow. So Sunday, we're running out of time here. We run up on Sunday. He's ready to go. The electric costs twice as much on a Sunday, boss. But again, it's a different set of communication skills, a different set of negotiation skills. But we achieved our aim, and there's a CPR going in the water. I did talk earlier about the shoreside people being the unsung heroes, and this slide kind of reinforces that story. The big picture is Royal Seaforth Container Terminal in Liverpool, and it's marked 1, 2, 3, and then the red dot. Number 1 is the main gate. That main gate, over the years I've been going there, it's been manned by dockside police, it's been manned by civilian security people, it's been manned by border force officers. That's the first security hurdle it's got to do, and that's where stuff gets delivered. We then got to get it through security point 2 and security point 3 until it arrives at the red hut. It actually is a red hut where the red splodge is on the photograph, and that's all done by our volunteers. So we'll ring them up and say, we're sending a box for a particular vessel. Can you please help us get it through all this this maze of the container port? And it happens month in, month out. And it's fantastic. And it doesn't happen just on the way there. It has to repeat because we need the samples back as fresh as possible all the way back. So there's some examples there of our iconic yellow boxes at the port. And just imagine the container port itself is huge. You're driving around in a hire car and it's like a maze of stacks of containers. One of our ports is probably about 2 miles down to the ship from the main gate. So again, our yellow boxes are not could be quite insignificant, but they're iconic yellow boxes, and we have particular people at the ports who volunteer outside of their normal work to look after them for us. So the 3 pictures on the left, the middle one is of Felixstowe, and you'll see like there's a forklift and a telehandler and bits in the background. And the guys there who maintain that dockside equipment are the guys who have taken ownership of, or joined our team, if you like, of volunteers. They've taken ownership. They will receive that box and make sure it goes down to the vessel that goes across to the Hook of Holland on a monthly basis. The bottom photograph is again back in Liverpool, and behind it is the lavatory block. And we have one time we had 3 vessels going off that quayside, and that was the arrival and collection point of our yellow boxes, again overseen by some great volunteers. So all that's going on, but we, David, myself, Jules, Martino, the whole team, we have to bear this in mind all the time. What we're asking them to do is nigh on mission critical for the CPR survey and the MBA for what we do. But for the shipping company, yeah, it's kind of important. It ticks some green credentials, but their business is to move equipment, move goods, run a business and make money. So we've got to just bear that in mind when we're talking to them. And that should be pinned up on our office wall, really. So how do we achieve a CPR tow on a monthly basis? You'll see the diagram on your screens. a couple of points I will mark. I won't explain each one because time's getting short, but just a couple of ones I will highlight. You'll see that people who work at Citadel Hill will see our yellow boxes disappear in the Tuffnells lorry, Tuffnells lorries. That in itself is becoming, it's changing all the time, and it's changing all the time for like safety reasons, safety regulations, security regulations, dangerous goods regulations, customs regulations, where we send stuff to foreign ports such as Tromso. So we've got to be on top of our game with the changing world that we're in. But what I think is one of the fantastic stories, that where I got at the top where it says cross deck, we have a particular CPR tow where we send our yellow box to a port in the UK. It's a long-standing arrangement. It goes on board another vessel that they take all the way across to Sweden. As it's going across to Sweden, the captain of that vessel talks to his friend who is running another vessel from Sweden down to Belgium. They drop it off again by a blue container, the blue container. When the vessel that comes from back up from Belgium into Sweden, they go to the blue container, they pick up our yellow box, they put it on, they tow it down, bring it back to Sweden. The vessel that's coming back to the UK picks it up, and it works, and we get a tow every month. We do offer a welfare payment, ship's welfare payment for every tow. And again, some vessels will accept this, others will want it to go for charity, and some have declined. But where they have accepted it, it's typically they will use that and save it up for things like cappuccino machines, flat screen TVs, ship's cruise outings. And again, we have another set of volunteers, because even that's quite an insignificant amount of money. We have another shoreside group of volunteers sat in the office who will administer that for us. And we even got some of the ship's agents where we can send it to them privately, and they will make sure that the captain gets that small amount of money on a monthly basis. So why do they do it? Well, first of all, when we talk to them, we have to be very clear and specific in the aim of what we're asking. So it's like one CPR tow every calendar month, will not interfere with your business, doesn't impede the ship in any way. The reason why is because of all the science, the fact that it's the results of the CPR survey are used across the globe, policymakers and scientists. They like to see the results, and these books we've got are a fantastic tool to help us do this. So we make sure that the captains and the crews get a copy of every new edition of these that come out, and we ask them to join a club. And if you grab one of those books and you open up the front cover, you'll see our tow, a map with all our tows on and all the ships. And it's quite a useful tool. When you have that initial discussion with the captain, you flip that open, and it's not unusual for them to say, "Oh, I recognise that ship. I was with that guy as a cadet." And then it's like, "Oh, if they can do it, we can do it." So it's that join a club, and we try to see them as an extended part of our team, and it's like a massive team effort that involves not only the people at Citadel Hill but the shipping industry. So the people who've enjoyed some of my talks before, at this point, I've been able to have a succession of slides up where we've got a collection of quotes from some of the ship's captains and some of the shoreside people on why they do it. But to sum that up briefly, briefer today, that they really care about the environment they're working in, and they've got like this affinity with the, as it says there, the affinity with the sea. So they're professional seagoing people. They love their environment, and they just want to help sort of protect it and help us monitor the health of the oceans, as we have been doing since 1931. We always sort of reassure them, and we give them the results, and we make sure they feel valued. And they are, without doubt, the strength of the survey. And as I put down there, because they are the strength of the survey, the backbone of the survey, could be the fragility of the survey. And I just sort of expand on that now. This is a route map that we had a few years ago in the back of our annual report. It highlights all the vessels that were towing for us and the areas we were towing. out of those hundreds of volunteers we've got, I just named like Roy and John. Roy and John have known each other for many, many years. They work for different companies at the same port in the UK. If they were told to withdraw their support, and I don't think they ever will, but if we had a safety breach, a security breach, or a regulation breach, we embarrassed them, and they had to withdraw their support, our route map overnight would be reduced to this. So we've got loads and loads of volunteers. We've got some gold star volunteers, but we cherish them all, and we're thankful for all the help we get from them. So when we're talking to these extended members of our team, we've got to make sure that we've got our knowledge up to date. So if we're quizzed by an engineer, a chief officer on the back of the ship, what's the spec of your tow wire? We need to be able to rattle that off verbatim. We need to speak the same language, and we need to speak the same language and tailor our communication. I suggest that if we're sat in a crew room on the dock side and the jokes are going, you need slightly different communication skills than if you're in the office with a CEO of a shipping company. But it's been able to engage with everyone and telling the story of our survey to those people, so that again they understand at their particular level what their efforts are achieving. We have to understand their pressures, and that kind of harks back to that previous slide, the mission critical slide. They have pressures. They have to meet lock gate times, they have to meet sailing times, they might have to move the ship from one berth to another whilst we're trying to do welding on board because of various cargo goes on at different places. So we need to know when to ask and when to ease back. But in all of this, enthusiasm is infectious. So when you go to the port, we have to be enthusiastic for what we do, and momentum. Momentum being, if we ask them to do something, we need to be keen for it to happen, because if it's not important to us, why on earth should it be important to anybody else? So to back this up, we have a system of port, a program, if you like, of ship and port visits. In the next 4 slides, I'll just show you some pictures on them. The one on the left, again, is Dave Wilson. These two, that's Donna and Pauline, who work up in Liverpool. Wonderful ladies. They're Royal Seaforth Container Terminal, slide you saw earlier. At one stage, several years ago, we were going to be charged to move the box through those various points. But these two ladies said, no, we believe in what the CPR survey is doing. They're a charity, address it to them. So we address our big yellow boxes to those two wonderful ladies, and they arrive outside their office, and they ensure that the forklift driver takes them down to the ship on a regular basis. Again, we've got Dave on the right-hand picture. That's on the bridge of the Hildesay, that runs a tow for us every month from the Shetlands down to Aberdeen. Dave's on a goodwill visit. They've just saved up our welfare payments to buy a new cappuccino machine. And you'll see on the bridge there a box of chocolates that Dave's delivered as a thank you present on the day of his visit. So again, that's a brief pause from drinking cappuccino to have the photograph taken. But again, just shows some extra volunteers. These 2 pictures were taken at the back end of last summer. That's me with the captain of the Atlantic Sea. Atlantic Sea is run by Atlantic Container Lines, and they've been a supporter of us for many years, running routes over Nova Scotia, off mid-Atlantic, and off the Irish coast. Well overdue a visit, so the effort was made to drive up the M5, drive up the M6 to see them. When I actually got on board, and I eventually found the bridge, because it's like a maze, these ships are enormous. Up this lift, out this corridor, up another lift, and eventually get up there. I actually only managed about 8 minutes, I think it was, with the captain. But those 8 minutes were immeasurably important. We managed to get the message across. I shook his hand. I left him a small gift, and he still refers to that visit now in his communications with us. So we're not a faceless organisation. The face-to-face meetings are essential, and without it, they wouldn't happen. Picture on the right, again, is on the Atlantic Sea. The guy on the right holding a box of chocolates, that's the bosun. He's been a supporter. He worked on at least 3 vessels that's towed the Plankton recorder over the years, and that's his right-hand man there with our branded coffee cup. Just after that picture was taken, the bosun nabbed the coffee cup and said, "I'm having that because I drink coffee." We also go and do some more formal presentations occasionally. The picture on the left there is Dave Wilson, as we both went up to Immingham. Immingham we've used for many, many years, but we just got to a period where there'd been a few staff changes. It was working. We just wanted to go and meet a few people again. So we spoke to their managers. Is it okay if we come up and give a presentation on the survey? Some of these guys have been moving again like our iconic yellow boxes for years, but they didn't really understand what was in there. So we left a succession of chocolates. I've never seen chocolates so quick in all my life as on that day. On the table for all the guys, but the managers came in, the stevedores came in, forklift operators, ships agents, and they came in. We give this good brief, and it kind of cemented our relationship with that particular port. Picture on the right. The reason I put this one up is that when you go to these places, you're never quite sure who you're going to meet. That's me and Torshaven in the Faroes. We went up there to see the vessel, see the shoreside manager. Before I knew it, I was being ushered into this guy's office, and he's the CEO of Smurl Lines, who didn't know too much about the CPR survey. And I was able to show him some films that we've done from the back of his vessel, and explain the survey and give him a crystal CPR. And that was worthwhile. It's like another golden line in our address book. And he said, if you need another route, Faroes to St. Petersburg, give me a call. So when we go to the ports, it's not just Dave's good look and my wit and charm, or the other way around. We also go armed with some goodies. Like I say, you've seen these in the previous slides. We've got some coffee cups, but this one here is like a crystal CPR. And one of our aims would be, wouldn't it be nice if we could get one of these on every CEO, shipping company CEO's desk? That'd be a real reminder of what we're going to do. I was going to bring some chocolates up as well, but unfortunately they didn't quite make it to the common room today. So why do they carry on monitoring during this current pandemic? Well, first of all, we're in our 89th year now, so we've got a lot of history, and the current operations team, all of us, see ourselves as like the custodians of something that's unique, special, of international, national value. So, and we tried to encompass all our volunteers into that team. It's been going for 89 years, let's keep it going, yes. And they see, we also sort of, through our contacts, through looking in the press, we understood what they were going through. So we had like crews that were unable to get off the ship. They were cocooned, they were isolated, self-isolating, so they didn't have the normal shift changes. Ships that could self-isolate, the crew were coming off, but they couldn't fly back to their home nations. So it was quite a tough time. So one of the things we did do, we put through a pack of goodie bags, and some of our CPR staff members donated some stuff. We also went out and bought some chocolates, and we sent each crew a goodie bag. And it was just a small gesture, but we've had some fantastic responses back from them. So why did they carry on? Why are we still monitoring during the pandemic? It has to be as a result of our investment in establishing and maintaining the network. The fact that we put the effort in, we involve them at all the levels. We know when to talk to them, we know when to reach back, but we've clearly shown empathy with their situation. And everything we do, we make sure it's safe and compliant. So we're never in a situation where we're going to embarrass any of our volunteers. So, milestone coming up very, very soon. Probably above 7 million by the end of this month. That's the end of my talk. Any questions? Questions?